The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor 3 feet from Isadora Sterling's face. Crystal fragments scattered across black and white checkered tiles like frozen tears. The sound cut through chamber music and polite conversation. 200 guests in the Newport Mansion's grand ballroom turned as one organism. Their faces held that particular expression wealthy people reserve for public scandal, hunger disguised as concern. Isadora did not flee. She stood perfectly still in her borrowed emerald gown. The dress belonged to Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, her employer. It was beautiful. It was also 2 years out of fashion, which in this room meant it screamed charity case louder than any words could. Vivian Blackwood stood 15 feet away. She wore midnight blue silk that probably cost more than Isadora earned in 6 months. Diamonds glittered at her throat like teeth. Her face held the kind of beauty that came from good genes and better cosmetic dermatology. Sharp, cold, viciously composed. How clumsy of me. Vivian's voice carried across the sudden silence. I do hope I didn't startle you, Miss Sterling. The title dripped with contempt. Mrs. Whitmore's hand found Isadora's elbow. A warning. A lifeline. Eleanor Whitmore had survived 40 years of high society warfare. She knew blood in the water when she smelled it. No harm done, Miss Blackwood. Isadora kept her voice steady, flat. She had practiced this voice for 4 years, the voice of someone who did not matter. Someone who blended into expensive wallpaper and Venetian plaster. Vivian smiled. It did not reach her eyes. You know, everyone here has been so curious about you. She turned to address the crowd like a conductor before an orchestra. Mrs. Whitmore's mysterious estate manager. So efficient, so educated, such impeccable references. The pause held venom. But I recognized you immediately, of course, though I suppose most people wouldn't remember the girl who lived in that little cottage near Willowbrook. 4 years ago, before she disappeared without a trace. Isadora felt the room shrink, felt 200 pairs of eyes dissect her borrowed dress, her careful makeup, her desperate attempt at invisibility. She had built a new life, one careful brick at a time. Vivian was taking a sledgehammer to the foundation. My brother visited that cottage quite regularly. Vivian's voice took on a theatrical quality. She was enjoying this. 3 times a week, if memory serves. Always after dark. Always alone. How very discreet. Someone gasped. Mrs. Whitmore's grip tightened on Isadora's arm. Of course, everyone knows Damien was engaged to Olivia Pemberton at the time. Vivian examined her manicured nails. The Pembertons own half the banks in Boston. Such a suitable match, until it wasn't. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Mistress, homewrecker. The words no one said, but everyone heard. That's quite enough, Vivian. A man's voice from the crowd. Older, authoritative, senator something or other. Even he sounded uncomfortable. Is it? Vivian turned her arctic gaze on him. I merely thought Miss Sterling's employer should know who she's harboring under her roof, given the circumstances. What circumstances? Mrs. Whitmore spoke for the first time. Her voice could cut glass. Vivian's smile widened. Why the theft allegations, of course. I'm sure they're completely unfounded. Just like I'm sure Miss Sterling had nothing to do with my brother's broken engagement. Or his subsequent difficulties. She let the word hang. Then she turned and walked away. Her heels clicked against marble like a countdown. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Conversations resumed in urgent whispers. Eyes found Isadora and slid away. Judging, dismissing, cataloging her for future gossip. Isadora stood frozen. 4 years of careful construction. 4 years of being no one, needing nothing, expecting less. Gone in 90 seconds. Mrs. Whitmore steered her toward the terrace doors. Fresh air. Escape. They made it 3 steps before Isadora saw him. Damien Blackwood stood near the refreshment table. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that emphasized shoulders broader than she remembered. His dark hair was shorter now. Streaks of silver at the temples that hadn't been there before. 4 years had carved away softness, left only angles and shadows. He looked older, harder, like something that had been broken and badly repaired. But his eyes were the same, storm gray, searching the crowd until they found her face. Recognition hit like a physical blow. Then something else, something that looked like longing and regret wrapped around a core of absolute certainty. He took a step forward. Isadora turned and walked in the opposite direction. The Whitmore Mansion library smelled like old leather and older money. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held first editions that no one read. Persian rugs thick enough to muffle footsteps. A marble fireplace cold despite October chill creeping through leaded windows. Isadora stood at the window watching moonlight silver the ocean beyond the lawn. Her hands shook. She pressed them flat against the glass until the trembling stopped. The door opened behind her. I gave you strict instructions not to follow me. She didn't turn around. When have I ever followed instructions? Mrs. Whitmore's voice held dry humor. Isadora heard ice clink in crystal, turned to see her employer pouring 2 generous measures of scotch. Eleanor Whitmore was 55, silver-haired, and possessed the kind of spine that had allowed her to bury a senator husband and emerge stronger. She wore power the way other women wore perfume. She held out a glass. Isadora took it. The scotch burned going down. Good. I should resign. Isadora's voice sounded distant to her own ears. Don't be ridiculous. She called me a thief in front of 200 people. Vivian Blackwood is many things. Subtle is not one of them. Mrs. Whitmore settled into a leather chair. Sit down before you fall down. Isadora sat. How much of it was true? Mrs. Whitmore's eyes held no judgment, only calculation. The cottage, Damien's visits, the engagement. Isadora stared into her scotch. All true. And the rest? I never stole anything. I never asked him to break his engagement. I left because he wouldn't choose. The words tasted like ash. He wanted both, the banking heiress and the poor historian's daughter. His future and his whatever I was. His love. Mrs. Whitmore said it like a diagnosis. Isadora's laugh held no humor. His convenience. Silence settled between them. Outside, gravel crunched. Car doors slammed. The gala was ending. Tomorrow the phones would ring. Lunch invitations would be canceled. The polite fiction that Isadora Sterling was respectable would crumble like wet paper. I meant what I said about resigning. And I meant what I said about being ridiculous. Mrs. Whitmore leaned forward. Do you know why I hired you 4 years ago? My references were impeccable. A bitter smile. Fake but impeccable. Because you reminded me of myself at 28. The admission hung in the air. I married Senator Whitmore for love. His family said I was after his money, after his name. They spent 20 years trying to prove it. Isadora looked up. She had never heard this story. The difference between you and me is that I had a ring. Mrs. Whitmore's expression hardened. You only had promises. But the contempt, the whispers, the assumption that ambition and affection can't coexist in a woman's heart that I know intimately. What did you do? I outlived them all. A grim smile. And I built an empire while I was at it. The door burst open. Damien Blackwood filled the frame. He looked like he'd run from the ballroom. His bow tie hung loose, jacket unbuttoned, hair disheveled from his hands. His eyes found Isadora and relief flooded his face. Then he saw Mrs. Whitmore and stopped. Forgive the intrusion, Mrs. Whitmore. His voice was deeper than Isadora remembered. Rougher. I need to speak with Isadora. Miss Sterling is not receiving visitors. Please. The word came out raw. 5 minutes. Isadora stood, her heart hammered against her ribs. 4 years of silence. 4 years of rebuilding, and he looked at her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. No. The word fell between them like a stone. Damien's face went blank, the look he always got when she heard him, when her words found the soft places he pretended didn't exist. Isa, don't. She cut him off. You don't get to call me that anymore. You don't get to burst in here like you have rights, like you didn't spend 4 years doing nothing while I... Her voice cracked. She swallowed the weakness, lifted her chin. You left me alone 4 years ago. I'm returning the favor. I searched for you. His voice went quiet, dangerous. I hired investigators. I checked every city between here and California. I went to your father's colleagues, his friends, anyone who might have known where you'd go. You should have looked harder. The words hit him like a slap. She saw him flinch, saw his jaw tighten with the effort of control. I broke the engagement 3 days after you left. Silence. Isadora felt the floor tilt beneath her feet, felt Mrs. Whitmore's sharp inhale of surprise, felt 4 years of careful certainty crack down the middle. What? I went to the Pembertons, told them I couldn't marry Olivia. I stood up to my mother, my sister, everyone who threatened to cut me off. His eyes never left her face. I was ready to give it all up. The company, the name, everything. To find you. Liar. But her voice wavered. 3 days, Isadora. That's how long it took me to realize that pile of stones and dead men's money meant nothing without you. He took a step into the room. When I saw the cottage empty, When I found the key on the table and not a single note, I thought something had happened to you. I thought you were dead. Another step. It took me 6 months to accept you'd left by choice. Another year to stop looking. I never stopped regretting. He stood close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Same brand, different man. I know what I did 4 years ago. I chose comfort over courage. I chose my inheritance over your heart. I was a coward wrapped in an expensive suit, and you deserve better. His hand reached for hers. She jerked back. Don't. I'm not that man anymore. Then prove it. The challenge hung between them. Not with words, with action. Before Damien could answer, the door opened again. This time a man in his 60s entered. Wire-rimmed glasses, conservative suit, the kind of generic professionalism that made him simultaneously trustworthy and forgettable. He carried a leather briefcase like it contained state secrets. Apologies for the interruption. His voice held Boston Brahmin vowels. Old money, old families. I was told I might find you here, Mr. Blackwood and Miss Sterling. Damien turned, his body shifting to shield Isadora. Protective instinct. She hated that it still worked on her. Who are you, Marcus Pemberton? He set his briefcase on a side table. I was your father's attorney, Miss Sterling. I've been trying to locate you for quite some time. Isadora's blood went cold among his. My father died 4 years ago. I'm aware. I handled his estate. Marcus removed a folder from the briefcase. Which is why I need to speak with you. Privately, if possible. Anything you have to say to Miss Sterling, you can say in front of me. Damien's voice went hard. Actually, Mr. Blackwood, that's not your decision to make. Isadora stepped around him, faced Marcus directly. My father had no estate. He died with debts and dignity. Nothing more. Marcus's expression didn't change. Your father had a great many things, Miss Sterling, including secrets he entrusted me to reveal only when you were ready. He opened the folder, removed a single sheet of paper, held it out. Isadora took it. The paper was heavy, expensive. The letterhead read, Sterling Maritime Holdings, LLC. Her hand started shaking again. Your father was not just a historian, Miss Sterling. Marcus's voice gentled. He was also a silent partner in one of Boston's most successful shipping companies. He hid it deliberately, to protect you from the kind of attention that wealth attracts. The room spun. This is a mistake. No mistake. I have all the documentation. Tax records, board minutes, share certificates. Marcus pulled out more papers. Your father owned 40% of Sterling Maritime. Upon his death, those shares transferred to you, along with accumulated dividends from the past 4 years. He removed one final document, set it carefully on the table. It was a bank statement. The number had so many zeros that Isadora's brain refused to process it. $180 million, Miss Sterling. Marcus's voice was gentle. Give or take a few million depending on market fluctuations. The Scotch glass slipped from Isadora's hand. It hit the Persian rug without breaking. Amber liquid soaked into antique wool. She had lived in a cottage with a leaking roof. She had sewn her own clothes. She had left Willowbrook with $10 and a broken heart because she refused to be bought. And her father had been a millionaire. This is impossible. Your father was a brilliant man, Miss Sterling, but he was also paranoid. He watched too many fortunes destroy the people who inherited them. He wanted you to build your own life first. Find your own strength. Only then would you inherit his. Damien moved closer. She felt his presence like heat. Did my father know? The question was directed at Marcus, but the lawyer looked at Isadora, waiting for permission. She managed a nod. Yes. Marcus adjusted his glasses. Theodore Blackwood and Silas Sterling were not friends exactly, but they moved in similar circles. They made an arrangement. If anything happened to Silas, Theodore would watch over Isadora, ensure she was safe. My father died 3 years ago. Damien's voice went flat. Who's been watching over her since then? Marcus hesitated. That would be me, Mr. Blackwood. From a distance, I made certain Miss Sterling's employment references were impeccable. I ensured her background checks came back clean. I've been monitoring her well-being. Isadora felt violation crawl up her spine. You've been spying on me. Protecting you. There's a difference. There. She turned to Mrs. Whitmore. Did you know? Eleanor's face held genuine surprise. I knew your references were too good to be true. I assumed you'd fabricated them. I didn't care. You were competent. A pause. And you reminded me of myself. Isadora's laugh came out strangled. I've been living on charity while sitting on a fortune. Your father's instructions were explicit. Marcus's voice took on a professorial tone. You were to inherit on your 30th birthday, or sooner if you faced genuine danger, either physical or financial. I'm 28. Yes, which brings me to why I'm here tonight. Marcus pulled out a newspaper clipping. Recent, yesterday's Society page. The headline read, Blackwood heiress Vivian targets former family associate. The article beneath was poison dressed as journalism. It detailed Isadora's mysterious background, her sudden appearance in Mrs. Whitmore's employment, the questions surrounding her relationship with the Blackwood family. It stopped just short of calling her a criminal, just barely. Vivian Blackwood has been making inquiries. Marcus's voice hardened, aggressive ones. She's hired investigators to dig into your past. She's been speaking with people who knew your father. She's looking for leverage. Why? But Isadora already knew. Damien's jaw clenched. Because she knows I still love you, and she'll destroy anything that threatens her control over the family business. Marcus nodded, which means, Miss Sterling, that you now face genuine danger. Financial, certainly, possibly physical, which triggers the early inheritance clause. He produced another document. This one required signatures. Sign this and your father's fortune becomes officially yours. You'll have the resources to protect yourself, to fight back. He paused. To ensure Vivian Blackwood can't destroy your reputation the way she clearly intends to. Isadora stared at the paper. 4 years ago, she would have sold her soul for this kind of security, for the power to stand as Damien's equal, for the ability to tell his mother and sister exactly where they could put their contempt. Now it felt like a trap, like her father's ghost reaching from beyond to manipulate her life one more time. What if I refuse? Then the money sits in trust until your 30th birthday, and Vivian continues her campaign unimpeded. Marcus's expression held sympathy. I knew your father for 30 years, Miss Sterling. He was many things. Controlling, yes. Paranoid, absolutely. But everything he did was to protect you from exactly this situation. This situation being powerful people who view you as a threat. Damien made a sound low in his throat. Dangerous. Vivian views everyone as a threat. It's her natural state. With respect, Mr. Blackwood, your sister has cause for concern. Marcus turned to him. Miss Sterling now controls 40% of Sterling Maritime. Your family's company, Blackwood Maritime, is Sterling's primary competitor. If Miss Sterling chose to leverage her position, I wouldn't. Isadora's voice cut through. I don't want anything to do with corporate warfare. What you want and what Vivian believes are not the same thing. Mrs. Whitmore spoke for the first time in minutes. Her voice held grim understanding. She sees you as competition, as a threat to her brother's focus, as the woman who might actually matter more than the family business. She stood cross to Isadora. Sign the papers, dear. Not because you want the money, but because you need the weapon. Isadora looked at Damien. His face held something she couldn't read. Hope, fear, support. If I sign, everything changes. Everything already changed. His voice was quiet. The moment Vivian said your name in that ballroom, he was right. She knew he was right. 4 years of invisibility shattered. 4 years of safety gone. Vivian had declared war. The only question was whether Isadora would fight back with her fists or with a fortune. She picked up Marcus's pen. The signature felt like jumping off a cliff. Marcus gathered the documents. I'll file these first thing Monday morning. In the meantime, I suggest you both prepare for Vivian's next move. She won't take this lying down. What do you recommend? Damien asked. Find out what she's hiding. Your sister doesn't attack this aggressively unless she's protecting something. Marcus snapped his briefcase shut. People who have nothing to hide don't weaponize other people's pasts. He moved to the door, paused. Miss Sterling, your father would be proud of you. Not because you're wealthy, but because you survived 4 years of poverty with your integrity intact. That was the real test. When he was gone, silence filled the library. Isadora turned to Damien. You said you weren't the same man, that you'd prove it with action, not words. Yes. Then help me destroy your sister. Her voice was steel. Show me every account she has access to, every transaction, every place she might be hiding secrets. If she wants war, I'll give her war, but I won't fight blind. Damien's expression shifted, something dangerous and determined. Are you sure once we start digging, there's no going back? I'll be investigating my own blood, betraying family loyalty. Is it betrayal to expose a crime, or is it justice? He held her gaze. making a choice, choosing her over family, over blood, over 4 years of conditioning that said Blackwoods protected their own no matter what. My laptop is in the car. I have access to certain family accounts, oversight privileges. He pulled out his phone. Give me 2 hours. I'll bring you everything. Why 2 hours? Because I need to go home first. Copy files before anyone knows what I'm looking for. His smile held no warmth. My sister is smart, but she's also arrogant. She thinks I'd never turn on family. That mistake is going to cost her everything. He moved to the door, stopped. Isadora, when this is over, when we've taken down Vivian and cleared your name, I want a chance, a real chance, to prove I've changed, to show you that I choose you. Not because you're wealthy now, but because I should have chosen you 4 years ago when you had nothing. Isadora's throat tightened. One battle at a time. One battle at a time. He nodded, effed, mit up. Whitmore poured them both fresh scotch. That man is either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both, Isadora took the glass. What would you have done if you were me? Exactly what you're doing, taking the weapon, preparing for war, trusting the man who broke your heart because he's the only one who knows the enemy well enough to help you win. She raised her glass. To terrible choices and the women strong enough to make them anyway. Isadora clinked her glass against Eleanor's. Outside, October wind rattled windows. The world turned. And somewhere in Boston, Vivian Blackwood slept peacefully, unaware that she'd just made a fatal mistake. She'd given Isadora Sterling a reason to fight, and 180 million reasons to win. The headline hit the Boston Globe's morning edition like a pom-poms. Blackwood heir's former companion revealed as shipping heiress. Isadora read it over coffee in Mrs. Whitmore's breakfast room. November had arrived with cold rain and colder headlines. Outside reporters camped on the front lawn. 3 news vans, photographers with telephoto lenses. The circus had come to Newport. At least they're calling you an heiress now instead of a mistress, Ms. Whitmore buttered toast with surgical precision. Progress. Isadora's phone had been ringing since dawn. Blocked numbers, unknown callers. She'd stopped answering after the first death threat. Apparently, some people felt strongly about social climbing women who seduced honest billionaires and hid secret fortunes. The irony was not lost on her. You should eat something. Mrs. Whitmore pushed a plate of eggs toward her. I'm not hungry. You're going to need your strength. The Sterling Maritime Board meeting is at 10, and Damien will be here in an hour with the files he promised. 3 days. Marcus had said the emergency board meeting would be in 3 days. 3 days for Vivian to prepare her counterstrike. 3 days for Isadora to arm herself with evidence. 3 days that had felt like 3 years. A knock at the door. The housekeeper entered, looking flustered. Madam, there's a Mr. Blackwood to see Miss Sterling. He says it's urgent. Show him to the library. We'll join him momentarily. Isadora wanted to run, wanted to hide, wanted to crawl back into her small, safe life where the hardest decision was which account books to balance first. Instead, she followed Mrs. Whitmore through corridors lined with oil paintings of dead Whitmores. They all looked vaguely disappointed, like they'd foreseen this disaster and were not surprised. Damien stood at the library window silhouetted against gray morning light. He traded evening clothes for dark jeans and a cashmere sweater. Casual attire that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He turned when they entered. His eyes found Isadora's face and held. Thank you for seeing me. Mrs. Whitmore said you have files. Isadora kept her voice businesslike. Show me. He pulled a laptop from his bag, spread documents across the library table. I spent the past 72 hours going through my sister's financial activity. Every account I could access. Every transaction I could trace. His finger moved across spreadsheets. Vivian has been very busy. Isadora moved closer. The numbers swam before her eyes. Wire transfers, shell companies, millions of dollars moving through corporate structures designed to hide and obscure. What am I looking at? Systematic embezzlement. Vivian has been stealing from Blackwood Maritime for 18 months. Small amounts, carefully disguised. But it adds up. He pulled up another file. Total so far, $52 million. The number hung in the air like an obscenity. Mrs. Whitmore leaned over Isadora's shoulder. Where did it go? Shell companies, holding corporations with innocuous names. Damien traced the money trail. Harborside Consulting, Atlantic Strategic Holdings, Meridian Investment Partners, all registered to the same address in the Caymans, all controlled by the same person. Vivian. Not exactly. He pulled up corporate registrations. The name on the paperwork is Preston Aldridge, my mother's second cousin. He runs a private equity firm. Isadora's mind raced. Why would Vivian funnel stolen money to a relative? Because Preston's been trying to buy into Blackwood Maritime for years. My father always refused, said he didn't trust private equity vultures. Damien's expression darkened. But if the company was weak enough, if it needed capital infusion badly enough, Preston could force a buyout. And Vivian would get a percentage. Millions, possibly hundreds of millions. She's not just stealing. Isadora's voice held wonder. She's sabotaging, weakening the company from within so Preston can take it over. Exactly. And she's been planning this for over a year, long before you reappeared, long before anyone knew you existed, Mrs. Whitmore straightened. This isn't about you at all, dear. Vivian's been running this scheme for months. You're just convenient collateral damage. Or convenient cover. Isadora studied the documents with fresh eyes. She attacks me publicly, makes me the villain. Everyone focuses on the gold digger while she loots the family company. Classic misdirection. Damien nodded. But she made a mistake. She didn't know you'd inherit. Didn't know you'd have resources to fight back. Didn't know I'd turn on her. His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression went from grim to granite. It's my mother. She wants to see me. Today, says it's urgent. Don't go. Isadora's instinct was immediate. I have to. If I refuse, she'll know something's wrong. She'll warn Vivian. He pocketed the phone. But I won't go unprepared. He pulled a small device from his bag, recording equipment. If my mother knows about Vivian's crimes, I'll get her to admit it. If she doesn't, I'll tell her. Either way, I'll have proof of what the family knew and when they knew it. That's your mother. That's a woman who might be complicit in corporate fraud. His voice was cold. Family loyalty ends where criminality begins. He gathered his laptop, looked at Isadora with something that might have been longing or regret or both. After the Sterling board meeting, after we've stopped the merger, after all this is over, he paused. Can we talk, really talk, about what happens next? Isadora wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that after the war came peace, that after they destroyed his sister and rebuilt their reputations, they could find their way back to each other. But 4 years of scar tissue made her cautious. One battle at a time. He nodded, understanding, accepting. One battle at a time. He left. The library felt colder without him. Mrs. Whitmore poured coffee from the service that had appeared while they worked. You still love him? It wasn't a question. I don't know what I feel. Isadora wrapped her hands around the cup. 4 years ago, he was everything. Now he's complicated. Love usually is. Eleanor settled into her chair. But I'll tell you what I see. I see a man who spent 3 days digging through his own sister's crimes to give you weapons. I see a man who's prepared to betray his family for you. I see a man who's learned the cost of choosing wrong and is desperate not to make that mistake again. You think I should forgive him? I think you should decide what you want. Revenge, justice, love, because you can't have all three. At some point, you'll have to choose which matters most. Isadora stared into her coffee, saw her reflection distorted in dark liquid. What did she want? 4 years ago, the answer had been simple. She wanted Damien to choose her, to stand up to his family, to value love over legacy. Now she had wealth of her own, power of her own. She didn't need him to rescue her, didn't need his name or his money or his protection. So what did she need him for? The answer came quiet and certain. She needed him to prove that people could change, that the scared boy who'd chosen inheritance over heart could become a man who chose truth over comfort. She needed him to show her that love wasn't always a weakness. Sometimes it was the strongest thing you could build. I need to get ready for the board meeting. She set down her cup. Whatever I decide about Damien comes after. First, I stop Vivian from destroying both our companies. Spoken like a true Sterling, Mrs. Whitmore smiled. Your father would be proud. The boardroom of Sterling Maritime occupied the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking Boston Harbor. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, ships moved like toys across gray water. November wind rattled the glass. Inside, 12 board members sat around a mahogany table that could have doubled as a landing strip. They stared at Isadora like she'd crawled out from under it. She wore her most conservative suit, charcoal gray, pearl earrings that had belonged to her mother, hair pulled back so tight it hurt. The armor of respectability. It didn't matter. She could feel their judgment like radiation. The youngest person in the room by 20 years. A woman, an unknown. And worst of all, the subject of yesterday's headlines. Miss Sterling. The chairman was 70 if he was a day. White hair, liver spots, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. We appreciate you taking the time to attend. Translation. We can't believe you had the audacity to show up. Isadora took the empty chair at the foot of the table, folded her hands, waited. Damien sat 3 seats away. He'd arrived separately, maintained the fiction that they weren't coordinating. His expression was professionally blank, but she caught the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed once against his thigh before going still. The recording device was in his pocket. He'd met with his mother an hour ago. Whatever he'd learned, his face gave nothing away. As you're aware, the chairman continued, Blackwood Maritime has proposed a merger. The terms are extremely favorable. We would combine operations, eliminate redundant overhead, and create the largest shipping conglomerate on the eastern seaboard. He slid a document across the table. Isadora didn't need to read it. She and Marcus had spent last night memorizing every clause. The board has voted. 10 members in favor, 1 abstention. His eyes flicked to Damien. We need your approval to proceed. No. The word dropped into silence like a stone into still water. The chairman blinked. I'm sorry. No, I don't approve the merger. Isadora kept her voice level. I'm voting against it. Murmurs rippled around the table. The chairman's face went from confusion to irritation. Miss Sterling, perhaps you don't understand the financial implications? I understand them perfectly. She leaned forward. This merger would benefit Blackwood Maritime significantly more than Sterling. They're overextended, overleveraged, and someone's been systematically embezzling from their operating accounts for 18 months. Dead silence. That's a serious accusation. A woman halfway down the table. Late 50s, designer glasses. CFO, if Isadora remembered correctly. It's a serious crime. Isadora pulled out her own document, passed copies down both sides of the table. These are wire transfers from Blackwood Maritime to shell companies controlled by Vivian Blackwood and Preston Aldridge. Total to date, $52 million. She watched faces change as they read. Shock. Calculation. The financial predators smelling blood in the water. Where did you obtain this information? The chairman's voice had gone cold. From Blackwood Maritime's own accounts. Mr. Blackwood has full access as a family member and shareholder. He brought the irregularities to my attention. Every eye turned to Damien. He met their gazes without flinching. My sister has been stealing from the company, funneling money to our cousin, Preston Aldridge. The merger proposal is designed to hide the theft and give them control of both companies. His voice carried absolute conviction. I'm voting against it. My 20% combined with Miss Sterling's 40% constitutes a controlling majority. The chairman's face went purple. This is highly irregular. So is embezzlement. Isadora stood. The merger is dead. If Blackwood Maritime wants a relationship with Sterling, they can propose it again after they've cleaned house and prosecuted the criminals in their executive suite. She gathered her papers, turned to leave. Miss Sterling, the chairman's voice stopped her. You've made a powerful enemy today. Isadora looked back, smiled without warmth. I made that enemy 4 years ago. Today I just stopped pretending she wasn't. She walked out. Damien followed. In the elevator, they stood in silence. 42 floors of descending tension. When the doors opened, Damien caught her arm. I need to tell you what my mother said. They found a coffee shop, anonymous, crowded enough for privacy through noise. Damien ordered 2 coffees neither of them would drink. My mother knew. His voice was hollow. Not about the extent, not about Preston, but she knew Vivian was moving money. She thought it was financial planning, asset protection. She didn't ask the questions because she didn't want to know. Willful ignorance. Worse, complicity. She told me, he stopped, struggled. She told me the family is bankrupt, has been for 2 years. The Blackwood fortune is gone. Mortgaged properties, depleted trust funds. We've been borrowing against assets to maintain appearances. Isadora felt the ground shift. The merger wasn't just about Preston's ambition. It was about survival. Vivian and my mother thought if they could merge with Sterling, the combined company would be strong enough to hide the Blackwood debts. They'd save the name, save the reputation. No one would ever know how close we came to public bankruptcy. And me, well, where did I fit in their plan? You didn't. You were a complication. Vivian attacked you because she was terrified I'd choose you over the family business. If I'd insisted on marrying you, my mother would have fought it. The family couldn't afford a scandal, couldn't afford anything that might spook creditors or investors. He pulled out his phone, played audio. Constance Blackwood's voice filled the space between them. Cultured, cold, admitting everything. The bankruptcy, the conspiracy, the plan to use the merger to hide their crimes, and buried in the middle one sentence that made Isadora's blood run cold. Vivian was right to attack that Sterling girl. We can't afford Damien's romantic entanglements. Not now. Not when everything depends on appearances. Damien stopped the recording. I have 2 hours of this. My mother admitting she knew about the embezzlement, knew about the merger plan, knew Vivian was destroying the company, and did nothing to stop it. What are you going to do with it? Give it to the SEC, to the federal investigators, to anyone who'll listen. His eyes met hers. I'm done protecting people who destroy lives to save their pride. Isadora reached across the table, took his hand. First time she'd touched him voluntarily in 4 years. This will destroy your family. My family destroyed itself. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. They sat there, holding hands in an anonymous coffee shop. Two people who'd loved and lost and found themselves on the same side of a war neither had wanted to fight. After this is over, Isadora said quietly, I don't know what happens to us. I don't know if I can trust you again. Don't know if I want to I know. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you chose truth over loyalty. I'm glad you're not the man who left me in that cottage 4 years ago. Damien's grip tightened. Neither am I. The ambush came in the parking garage. Isadora was 3 steps from her car when she heard heels on concrete. Sharp, rapid, angry. She turned. Constance Blackwood emerged from behind a concrete pillar like an avenging ghost. She wore black Chanel, pearls that probably cost more than Isadora's car. Her face was a mask of controlled fury. You have destroyed my family. Isadora kept her hand on her car keys, calculated the distance to the driver's door. Wondered if Constance would actually try to physically stop her. Your daughter destroyed your family. I just exposed it. Vivian made mistakes. All children do. Constance moved closer. But she was protecting what matters. The Blackwood name, the Blackwood legacy, things you could never understand. I understand legacy. Isadora's voice went hard. My father built one without stealing, without lying, without destroying people who got in his way. Your father was a coward who hid his fortune and let his daughter live in poverty. Constance's lip curled. At least I taught my children the value of what we built. You taught them that money matters more than integrity, that power excuses cruelty, that anyone not born into your world deserves contempt. Isadora took a step forward. You taught them to be exactly like you. Constance's hand moved fast. The slap connected with Isadora's cheek, sharp, stinging. The sound echoed off concrete and steel. For 3 seconds, neither woman moved. Then Isadora smiled. It was not a kind expression. Feel better. Constance's hands shook. Whether from rage or shock at her own violence, Isadora couldn't tell. You will regret this. I promise you that. My family has connections you can't imagine. We will destroy you. We will take everything you have, and we will grind you into dust. Try, Isadora touched her burning cheek. But understand something, Mrs. Blackwood. I'm not the girl from the cottage anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm not afraid. And I have resources now that match yours. She unlocked her car, paused with her hand on the door. Your son chose me over your approval. Your daughter chose crime over family loyalty. And you chose pride over everything. Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's you. She got in the car, drove away, left Constance standing alone in the parking garage with her fury and her pearls and the slowly dawning realization that she'd lost. Marcus Pemberton's office had become war room and sanctuary. Maps of corporate structures covered one wall. Legal documents blanketed every surface. Empty coffee cups marked the passage of sleepless nights. He poured Isadora a scotch she didn't ask for but accepted anyway. The SEC has opened an investigation. Federal agents will be interviewing Vivian tomorrow. His tone was dry. Your recording accelerated everything. Good. Isadora sipped the scotch. It burned. What happens now? Now we wait for Vivian's counterstrike. She knows you've blocked the merger. She knows her crimes are exposed. She's cornered and dangerous. Marcus removed his glasses, cleaned them with a cloth from his pocket. Cornered animals bite. Let her. There's something else. He pulled out a document. Old, yellowed, official seals. Vivian has found something in the family archives. She showed it to the Blackwood board this morning. It's Theodore Blackwood's will, Damien's grandfather. Isadora's stomach sank. What does it say? Marcus slid the document across. Article 7 was highlighted. In the event that my heir or any subsequent heir enters into matrimony with an individual of demonstrably questionable moral character, or with an individual lacking in appropriate social standing and reputation, the entirety of the Blackwood family trust shall be dissolved and distributed to the junior branch of the family, specifically the Aldridge line, who have maintained the standards of conduct befitting the Blackwood name. The words blurred before Isadora's eyes. This is... She couldn't finish. Unconscionable, but binding. Marcus's voice was grim. I've had 3 law firms review it. Theodore Blackwood drafted this will 15 years ago. It's been validated. It's ironclad. What does this mean? It means if Damien marries you, he loses everything. The trust fund, the company shares, the properties, $300 million worth of assets transferred to Preston Aldridge. Marcus leaned forward. Vivian knows Damien cares for you. She's making sure there's a price. Isadora set down her glass, felt 4 years of hope collapse like a house of cards. How much does he lose? Everything. He'd keep his salary as an executive. Maybe, if the board doesn't fire him, but controlling interest gone, family assets gone. The Blackwood legacy his great-great-grandfather built, handed over to a cousin who's been conspiring to steal it anyway. There has to be a loophole. I've been searching for 3 days. The will is airtight. Theodore Blackwood had it drafted specifically to prevent exactly this situation. He wanted to make sure future generations couldn't marry for love instead of strategy. Isadora stood, walked to the window. Outside, November rain turned Boston streets to mirrors. 4 years ago, Damien had chosen his inheritance over her. Now he'd have to make that choice again. Only this time she had wealth of her own, power of her own. She didn't need his money, but she needed to know if he'd choose her anyway. There's more. Marcus's voice pulled her back. Vivian's petition to the board. She's requesting emergency action. Wants them to vote on whether Damien's association with you constitutes questionable judgment. If they vote yes, the trust starts to dissolve immediately, before you even get married. Can they do that? The will gives them discretionary power, and Vivian has enough allies on the board. Enough leverage. He paused. The vote is tomorrow, 3 days after the Sterling board meeting. Damien will have to decide, you or his inheritance. 3 days. The timeline aligned like some cosmic joke. 3 days she'd asked for. 3 days she was getting, but not the way she'd imagined. The door opened. Damien stood in the frame. He looked hollowed out, exhausted, like he'd aged a decade in 3 days. You heard? Not a question. Marcus told me. Isadora turned from the window. $300 million. Your entire inheritance, everything your family built. Gone if I choose you. He moved into the room. Vivian's endgame. She destroys the company through embezzlement. Then uses our grandfather's will to destroy me for loving you. Preston gets everything either way. What are you going to do? Damien looked at her. Really looked. Like he was memorizing her face for a future where she didn't exist in his life. Then he went to one knee, right there in Marcus Pemberton's office, on hardwood floors that had seen a century of legal drama. I'm going to ask you to marry me, for real this time. Not someday, not after the battle's end. Right now, today. Isadora's heart stopped. Damien, you'll lose everything. I'll lose everything if I don't. His voice was raw. 4 years ago, I chose money over you. I chose my inheritance. I chose the easy path, and I spent every day since regretting it. He pulled a ring from his pocket. Simple platinum band, single diamond. I don't care about the trust fund. I don't care about the company shares. I don't care if I have to start over with nothing. His eyes burned into hers. I care about you, about us, about proving that I've learned what actually matters. You don't know what you're saying. $300 million is just numbers and accounts I never earned. My grandfather's money, my father's money, not mine, never mine. His hand shook. But you're real, you're here. You're the only thing I've ever wanted that actually mattered. Isadora felt tears burn her eyes, felt 4 years of armor crack. They'll take everything, then let them. I'll build something new, something that's actually mine, with you. He held out the ring. Marry me, Isadora. Not because I'm wealthy, not because I'm powerful, but because I'd rather have nothing with you than everything without you. She looked at Marcus. The lawyer's expression was carefully neutral. This is a terrible financial decision, Marcus said quietly. You'd be giving up generational wealth, security, power. I know. Damien didn't look away from Isadora. You'd be starting over, building from nothing, facing every door your name used to open suddenly slammed shut. I know. And you're willing to do that for her, for us. Damien's voice strengthened. For the life we should have had 4 years ago. For the chance to prove that some things matter more than money. Isadora pulled him to his feet, held his face between her hands. You're an idiot. I know. You're throwing away a fortune. I know. Your family will never forgive you. I know. His smile was broken and beautiful. Do you have any other objections, or are you going to answer my question? Isadora kissed him. Desperate, grateful, real. When they pulled apart, she was crying. Yes. The word echoed in the office. Marcus coughed, looked away, gave them privacy. Damien slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. We're going to lose everything, Isadora whispered against his chest. We already have everything. He held her tight. Everything that matters. The emergency board meeting was held at Blackwood Maritime's headquarters, a glass tower that loomed over the harbor like a monument to old money and new crimes. Isadora entered through the main lobby with Damien beside her. Felt eyes track them, whispers follow them. The couple who'd destroyed the merger. The fortune hunter and the foolish heir. The scandal that wouldn't die. She wore red, deliberately. A suit that cost a fortune and announced her refusal to hide. Heels that added 3 inches in confidence. Hair down instead of pulled back. War paint instead of armor. The boardroom was all steel and glass. Modern, cold, designed to intimidate. 15 board members sat around a table that could have hosted the United Nations. Most were men. All were over 50. They looked at Isadora like she was a virus that had infected their pristine corporate body. Vivian sat at the head of the table. She wore black. Diamonds at her throat. Victory in her eyes. Constance Blackwood sat beside her daughter. United front. Family loyalty. The message was clear. Choose us or lose everything. Preston Aldridge occupied a seat near the middle. Late 30s. Handsome in a corporate shark kind of way. His smile when he saw Isadora held calculation and contempt. Thank you all for coming. Vivian's voice cut through murmurs. We're here to discuss a matter of urgent importance to the Blackwood family legacy. She pulled up a screen. Theodore Blackwood's will appeared. Article 7 highlighted. My brother has been conducting a relationship with a woman of questionable character. Isadora Sterling has been the subject of numerous allegations. She destroyed the Sterling-Blackwood merger. She conspired with Damien to access confidential family accounts. She has systematically positioned herself to benefit from Blackwood resources. She clicked to another slide. Headlines, the worst ones. Former mistress revealed as heiress. Blackwood heir's secret shame. Fortune hunter targets shipping dynasty. These are not rumors. These are documented facts. Miss Sterling lived as my brother's kept woman while he was engaged to another woman. She disappeared for 4 years only to return conveniently when her inheritance was revealed. Isadora sat perfectly still. Let Vivian dig her grave with words. Therefore, I am calling for a vote. Does Damien Blackwood's association with Isadora Sterling constitute grounds for trust dissolution under Article 7 of Theodore Blackwood's will? Silence. Then Marcus Pemberton stood. He'd been sitting quietly in the corner, observer status. Now he moved to the table like a general taking the field. Before you vote, I'd like to present some additional context. His voice filled the room. Command, authority. Miss Sterling has provided documentation to refute these allegations. May I? Vivian's eyes narrowed. This is not a trial. No, it's a board meeting, which means all relevant information should be considered before voting. Marcus didn't wait for permission. He pulled out folders, passed them around the table. Tax returns from Miss Sterling's time in Willowbrook. You'll note she earned a teaching salary, modest but documented. She paid rent on the cottage. She received no gifts or payments from Mr. Blackwood or any Blackwood entity. He clicked to change the slide. Bank statements appeared. Her accounts from that period. No unusual deposits, no transfers from Blackwood sources, no evidence of financial support or kept woman status. She supported herself entirely. Another click. Letters. References from Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, Senator Whitmore's widow, and one of Boston's most respected society figures. From the headmistress of Ashford Academy, where Miss Sterling completed her graduate studies, from 3 Sterling Maritime board members who worked with her father, all attesting to her character and integrity. Marcus paused. Let the board absorb. As for questionable moral character, I'd like the board to specify what exactly Miss Sterling has done. She loved a man who was engaged to someone else. That man broke his engagement of his own free will. She left when she realized the relationship had no future. She supported herself for 4 years. She inherited a legitimate fortune from her father's legitimate business. He looked directly at Vivian. Where is the moral failing? Where is the low character? Or is this vote actually about something else entirely? Vivian stood. This is about you protecting your embezzlement scheme. Isidora's voice cut through like a blade. Every head turned. She stood, calm, certain, powerful. You've been stealing from this company for 18 months, funneling money to Preston Aldridge, planning to engineer a takeover. The merger with Sterling Maritime was designed to hide your crimes and give you control of both companies. She pulled out documents, the evidence she and Damien had compiled. Wire transfers, shell companies, offshore accounts, $52 million stolen from Blackwood Maritime and delivered to your cousin. This vote isn't about protecting the family. It's about silencing the people who discovered your crime. The boardroom erupted. Voices overlapped. Demands for explanation. Shocked gasps. Preston Aldridge stood. This is slander. This is documentation. Damien moved beside Isadora. United front. Every transaction, every transfer, every lie you and my sister told to cover it up. It's all here, and it's all been reported to the SEC. Constance Blackwood's face had gone white. Vivian, tell me this isn't true. Vivian's mask cracked. Just for a moment. Isadora saw fury and fear in something else. Desperation. Mother, they're trying to destroy us. You destroyed us. Constance stood. Her voice shook. You stole from your own family, conspired with Preston for what money power? For survival. Vivian's composure shattered. This company is dying, Mother. Has been for years. Bad investments, declining markets. We're mortgaged to our eyeballs. I was trying to save us before we collapsed into public bankruptcy. The word hung in the air like smoke. Bankruptcy. Isadora felt the room shift, felt understanding click into place. You're broke. Her voice was quiet, certain. The Blackwood fortune is gone. Constance sank back into her chair. Suddenly older. Fragile. Not gone. Not yet. But close. Her voice was barely a whisper. Theodore's trust is mostly a liquid. Properties, art, ships that are mortgaged beyond their value. The cash reserves have been depleted for years. We've been borrowing against assets to maintain appearances. She looked at her daughter with something like horror. I told Vivian to fix it. I told her to do whatever necessary to save the family. I didn't know she'd... Her voice trailed off. You knew. Isadora's voice was steel. You approved the merger. You wanted Damien to give up on me. You've been complicit in all of it. Constance didn't deny it. Preston Aldridge made a break for the door. 2 security guards blocked his path. Marcus had planned ahead. The SEC has frozen Mr. Aldridge's accounts pending investigation. Marcus's voice was calm, professional. Miss Blackwood's as well. This company is now under federal scrutiny. Vivian slumped in her chair, defeated. I was trying to save us, by destroying everyone else. Damien's voice was hollow, by lying, stealing, ruining lives. He turned to the board. I resign. Effective immediately. I won't be part of this anymore. He took Isadora's hand. They walked out together. Left behind the chaos, the accusations, the spectacular implosion of a family dynasty. In the elevator, Damien stood with his forehead pressed against the cold steel wall. His shoulders shook. 300 years. My family built this city. Funded schools, hospitals, built ships that won wars. His voice broke. And we're ending in bankruptcy and federal charges. Isadora touched his back, felt his pain like her own. You're not responsible for their choices. I'm a Blackwood. It's all I've ever been. He turned to face her. His eyes were red. And now there's nothing left. No fortune, no company, no family that isn't facing federal charges. The elevator doors opened. Ground floor, lobby, freedom. Damien stepped out. Stopped. I have nothing, Isadora. No fortune, no company, no family that isn't criminal or bankrupt or both. His laugh was bitter. Some prize you're getting. A penniless ex-heir with a disgraced name. Isadora pulled him close. Right there in the lobby, in front of security guards and shocked employees in a world that was about to tear his name apart. You have me. Her voice was fierce. Certain. You have me, and 3 days ago you said that was enough. Was that true? Damien held her like she was oxygen. Yes. Then let's go home. She took his hand. What, to the estate? Not to the mansion. Home, wherever that is for us now. They walked out the main doors, into November rain that soaked through expensive clothes, into a future with no guarantees, into freedom purchased at the cost of everything. But they walked out together, and that Isadora thought was worth more than any inheritance. Marcus Pemberton's phone rang at 8 p.m. He answered to find Constance Blackwood on the line. She sounded older, smaller, broken in ways money couldn't fix. I need to speak with you, and with Miss Sterling, tomorrow morning. I have information, something that changes everything. What kind of information? The kind that proves I'm a fool, and that my father-in-law was wiser than I gave him credit for. Marcus arranged the meeting, hung up, stared at his phone. Constance Blackwood didn't ask for meetings. She demanded them. If she was asking, something significant had shifted. He called Isadora. Constance wants to meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. Says she has information that changes everything. It's a trap. Probably, Marcus's voice was dry, but I'm curious what kind, and whether it involves you getting your fiancé's inheritance back. Silence, then. We'll be there. Marcus hung up, poured himself a scotch. Tomorrow would be interesting. In the Blackwood estate, Constance sat alone in Theodore's study. The room hadn't been used since her father-in-law died. Dust-covered mahogany. Leather chairs smelled of age and secrets. She'd spent the past 6 hours going through Theodore's private papers, documents the family lawyers had filed away. Archives no one had bothered to read, and she'd found it. The letter. The truth. Her hands shook as she read it for the third time. Theodore Blackwood had been many things. Controlling, autocratic, obsessed with legacy, but he'd also been testing them. All of them. And Constance realized with crushing clarity that she'd failed spectacularly. She picked up the phone, called her daughter's attorney. Vivian was out on bail, facing charges, destroyed. Tell Vivian I'm sorry. Tell her I enabled this. Tell her, her voice broke. Tell her I was wrong about everything. She hung up, sat in the dark study, and for the first time in 40 years, Constance Blackwood cried, not for the fortune, not for the name, but for the son she'd driven away and the woman he'd chosen who was worth 100 Blackwood fortunes. Morning came cold and bright. Isadora and Damien arrived at Marcus's office at 9 sharp. They'd spent the night at Mrs. Whitmore's guest house, talked until dawn, made plans for a future that didn't include inherited wealth or family companies. They'd laughed, cried, made love like people who'd survived a war. Now they faced whatever Constance had to say. She was already there when they arrived, sitting in Marcus's guest chair. She looked smaller, older, no makeup, gray roots showing through carefully maintained blonde, a cardigan instead of Chanel. She looked human. Thank you for coming. Her voice lacked its usual command. Isadora and Damien sat, waited. Constance pulled a wooden box from her bag. Mahogany, ornate, the kind of container that held secrets too valuable for filing cabinets. This belonged to Theodore, my father-in-law. He gave it to me 3 days before he died. Made me promise not to open it until... She paused, steadied herself. Until the family faced destruction from within. She opened the box. Inside lay a single envelope, yellowed, sealed with voice bearing the Blackwood crest. He wanted you to have this, Damien, when you were ready. Damien took the envelope like it might explode. Broke the seal, read. His face went from confusion to shock to something Isadora couldn't name. This is impossible. What does it say? Isadora moved beside him. He handed her the letter. It was handwritten, shaky penmanship that came from age or emotion or both. My dear Damien, if you're reading this letter, then several things have happened. You've met someone your family deems unsuitable. You've faced the will I created, the one with Article 7 and its harsh conditions. And you've made a choice. I need you to understand something. That will is not real, not legally binding, not enforceable. It was theater, a performance designed to reveal character when character matters most. I spent my life watching men inherit fortunes they never earned. Watch them destroy what better men built. I swore my heir would be different, would prove himself worthy not through birth but through choice. The clause about questionable moral character was designed to force you to choose. Money or love, status or heart, the easy path or the right one. If you chose the woman, if you were willing to walk away from everything to prove your love was real, you passed the test. If you chose the fortune, you failed. It was always that simple. The real will, the legally binding one, sits in a safe deposit box at First National Bank. Box number 847. Marcus Pemberton has had the key all along. He was instructed to reveal its existence only after you made your choice. If you're reading this letter, it means you chose her, which means you understand something I learned too late. Legacy isn't about money. It's about who you choose to become when everything is at stake. Choose her, Damien. Choose love over legacy. And in doing so, prove you understand what legacy actually means. You inherit everything, the trust, the properties, the shares, all of it. Not because you were born to it, but because you proved you'd give it up for something that actually mattered. Your grandfather, Theodore Blackwood. Silence filled the office like a physical presence. Isadora read the letter twice. Each time the words stayed the same. A test. The entire will had been a test. Marcus! Damien's voice came out strangled. Did you know? The lawyer's expression held decades of careful secrets. I knew Theodore was unconventional. I received specific instructions. When you resigned from Blackwood Maritime, when you walked away from the company to stand with Miss Sterling, I was authorized to retrieve the real will from the safe deposit box. He pulled out a document from his desk drawer. Heavy paper, official seals, notarized. The actual last will and testament of Theodore Blackwood. No moral clauses, no character requirements. Everything goes to you, Damien. The trust, the properties, the shares, all of it. He paused. Provided you married for love, not advantage, which you've clearly done. Damien stared at the will, at the letter, at the box that had held a dead man's final lesson. He knew. Grandfather knew this would happen. Knew Vivian would find the fake will. Knew my mother would use it. Knew I'd have to choose. He planned for every contingency. Marcus's voice was gentle. Including your family's bankruptcy. Including Vivian's crimes. The real will has provisions, emergency funds, legal protections. Everything you need to rebuild what your sister destroyed. Isadora felt dizzy. So Damien doesn't lose the inheritance. He never was going to lose it. Not if he made the right choice. Marcus looked at Constance. The only question was whether anyone else would pass Theodore's test. Constance's composure cracked. I failed. I knew the moment I read his letter to me. The one he left in the same box. She pulled out another envelope, hands shaking. Theodore wrote to me too. Told me the will was fake. Told me to trust Damien's judgment. Told me that if I tried to interfere, if I chose fortune over my son's happiness, I would prove myself unworthy of the Blackwood name. She looked at Isadora with devastated eyes. I failed spectacularly. I aligned with a criminal daughter. I attacked an innocent woman. I chose appearance over truth. I am everything Theodore warned against. She pulled out more documents. These are share transfers. I'm giving you 20% of what's left of Blackwood Maritime, Miss Sterling. No strings, no conditions. Consider it restitution, or a wedding gift, or payment for teaching me a lesson I should have learned 40 years ago. Isadora stared at the papers. 20%. Combined with Damien's controlling interest in the emergency funds from Theodore's real will, they could rebuild the company. Save it. Transform it into something better than what had burned down. Why, her voice was quiet. Because you were right. Constance met her eyes. I don't regret my prejudice. I regret being wrong about your worth. That's a damning self-assessment. I'm 65 years old, too late to change my fundamental nature, but not too late to acknowledge the damage it caused. She stood. I'm moving to the Connecticut estate, retiring from the board. Vivian will plead guilty next week. When she's released, I'll try to help her rebuild. But I won't inflict her on this city again. What about Preston? Damien asked. Fighting extradition from the Caymans. He'll lose. The evidence is overwhelming. Constance moved to the door. He always loses when he doesn't have my money protecting him. She paused. You'll be good for the company. Better than we deserve. You'll ask questions we should have asked decades ago. You'll demand ethics we've pretended don't matter. She looked back. My husband would have liked you, Miss Sterling. Theodore too, obviously. They were both better men than the system they perpetuated. She left. The documents remained. Damien sat down, hard, like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. I don't understand. Why would grandfather do this, the elaborate test, the fake will, the conditions? Because he loved you. Marcus's voice was certain, and he knew the only way to ensure you'd choose correctly was to make the choice cost you everything. If the inheritance came easy, you'd never value it, never understand its weight, never prove you deserved it. He stood, moved to the window. Theodore Blackwood watched his own father squander a fortune, watched friends' children destroy family businesses through incompetence and entitlement. He wanted different for you, wanted to ensure that when you inherited, you'd already proven you could walk away from it. And if I'd chosen wrong, then Preston Aldridge would have inherited everything, and Theodore's fortune would have gone to someone who valued it for what it was, just money. Not legacy, not family, just numbers and accounts. Marcus turned back. But you chose right. You chose love. You chose truth. You chose to burn down a corrupt system rather than benefit from it. That's what Theodore was looking for. That's what makes you worthy. Isadora took Damien's hand, felt him trembling. You're wealthy again, she smiled. How does it feel? Terrifying. His laugh was shaky. What if I screw it up? What if I become what Vivian was? What if the money corrupts me? Then I'll be there to remind you that you were willing to give it all up. She squeezed his hand. And if that doesn't work, I'll leave, take my sterling fortune and build something better while you figure out who you want to be. Damien pulled her close. I want to be the man who deserves you. And then be that, every day, with or without the Blackwood fortune. The scandal broke wide open not through legal documents or press releases, but through something far more damaging in the world of old money and older grudges. Public humiliation, the Boston Opera House annual gala, black tie, society's finest, the event where reputations were made and destroyed with equal efficiency. Vivian Blackwood attended despite her attorney's advice, released on bail. Defiant, she wore crimson. Statement jewelry, the armor of someone who refused to admit defeat. She arrived alone. Preston had fled back to the Caymans. She stood in the grand lobby accepting congratulations from people who didn't know the truth yet. The ambush came during intermission. The opera house lights came up. Guests flowed into the grand lobby. Crystal chandeliers threw prisms across marble. Champagne flowed. Conversations buzzed with carefully modulated scandal. Then the screens flickered to life. Every display in the lobby, every monitor, every surface that could show an image suddenly carried the same feed. Bank statements, wire transfers, email chains. The complete evidence of Vivian and Preston's conspiracy projected in high definition for everyone to see. The crowd went silent, watched numbers scroll past, watched proof of systematic theft play out like a corporate thriller. Vivian's face went white. She looked around wildly for an exit. Ladies and gentlemen. Marcus Pemberton's voice echoed through the sound system. He stood on the grand staircase like a prosecutor before a jury. I apologize for interrupting your evening, but I thought you should see what real moral character looks like. He gestured to the screens. Vivian Blackwood has spent the past week claiming Isadora Sterling is a gold digger, a fraud, someone of questionable ethics who doesn't deserve a place in Boston society. Another gesture. The screens changed. Now they showed Isadora's tax returns, charitable donations, work history, every piece of her life laid bare. This is the woman Vivian called unsuitable, a woman who paid her own way, earned her own fortune through legitimate inheritance, a woman who has never taken a dollar she didn't earn. The screens changed again, back to Vivian's crimes. And this is the woman who claimed moral authority to judge her. $52 million stolen, systematically, over 18 months, from her own family, to fund a conspiracy with Preston Aldridge. He paused. I'll let you decide who deserves your respect. Vivian ran, pushed through the crowd, heels clicking on marble, but there was nowhere to go. The evidence played on every screen, her crimes broadcast to everyone who mattered. In a private box overlooking the lobby, Isadora and Damien watched the scene unfold. They'd orchestrated this with Marcus, planned every detail, given Vivian just enough rope. Is it over? Isadora's voice was quiet. The public part. Damien pulled her close. The legal part will take months, but the part where she gets to hurt people, that's over. Below them, society processed the evening's real drama. Vivian's fall, Isadora's vindication, the Blackwood family's spectacular implosion broadcast in real time. Justice served with champagne and witnesses. The opera resumed. On stage, a soprano hit a note that made Crystal ring. And in their box, two people who'd fought through tests and betrayals and the weaponized legacy of a dead man held hands and watched art triumph over scandal. They'd won. Not through violence or vengeance, but through truth, through choosing each other when it would have been easier to walk away. Through proving that some things mattered more than money or name or social standing. They'd won. They returned to Willowbrook on a December morning when frost turned grass to silver. The cottage looked exactly as Isadora remembered. Small, shabby, perfect. Damien had maintained it through the years, kept it painted, fixed the roof, tended the roses her father had planted, a shrine to a love story that had ended badly and was starting again. They walked through rooms that held ghosts of younger versions of themselves. The kitchen where she'd made terrible coffee. The bedroom where they'd whispered promises neither believed would last. The garden where her father had died and where she'd decided to leave. Full circle. Different people in the same space. Damien stopped at the oak tree. Ancient, gnarled. It had stood for 200 years. Would stand for 200 more. 4 years ago I asked you to wait for me. His voice was quiet. To be patient while I figured out how to choose you over everything I'd been taught to value. I remember. I was wrong. I wanted everything. The acceptable life and the woman I loved. I thought I could have both if I was strategic enough. He turned to face her. But love doesn't work that way. He pulled out the ring box again, opened it, the same ring she already wore. This is the ring I gave you when I thought I was losing everything. When I chose you over $300 million. When I proved, or thought I proved, that you mattered more than money. He went to one knee, on the same ground where he'd once kept her like a secret. Now I know the truth. Grandfather's test, the fake will, the inheritance I never lost because I made the right choice. His eyes met hers. But this ring, this choice, this has nothing to do with tests or inheritances or dead men's approval. Then what is it? It's me choosing you, again, every day, not because passing a test gave me permission, not because losing everything proved I was worthy, but because you're you, and I'd rather build a life with you than inherit 1,000 fortunes. Isadora pulled him to his feet. You already gave me this ring. I know, but that was when I thought I had nothing to offer but love. Now I have everything. The Blackwood fortune, the company, the name, all of it. He took her hands. And it still matters less than you do. I want you to know that, to believe it, to never doubt that if I had to choose again tomorrow, I'd choose you. Isadora felt tears burn her eyes. You're doing this all wrong. You're supposed to propose once, not 3 times. Then tell me what you want, and I'll do it right. She thought about it. 4 years of pain, 6 weeks of battle, a fake will and a real inheritance, and a dead man's test that had revealed everyone's true character. What did she want? I want you to kiss me, under this tree, in this garden, in the place where everything started. Her voice was steady. And then I want us to go inside, pack up the cottage, and never come back here as the people we were. And what people will we be? The people who survived, who chose each other when it costed everything, who built something new from the ashes of what burned down. Damien kissed her, soft, certain, real. The frost began to melt as December's sun climbed higher. Water dripped from bare branches. The garden breathed. When they pulled apart, Isadora smiled. Now let's go home. Not here, not the estate. Wherever home is for us now. Where is that? I don't know yet, but we'll build it. Together. They went inside, packed a few belongings, left the cottage to whatever future waited for it. As they drove away, Isadora looked back once. Saw the oak tree standing guard over an empty garden. Saw the place where she'd been happiest and most broken. Saw the past receding. Regrets, Damien asked. Only one. What's that? That I wasted 4 years being angry instead of building what comes next. We're building it now. We are, she took his hand. Speaking of which, I had an idea about the companies. I'm listening. What if we merged them, Sterling and Blackwood, created something new? Something that honored what our fathers built, but fixed what they broke. Damien smiled. You want to merge with the family that tried to destroy you? I want to prove that some things are stronger than hate, stronger than prejudice, stronger than a dead man's tests. Her voice strengthened. Your grandfather wanted to know if you choose love over money. What if we proved that choosing love doesn't mean abandoning everything else? What if we built something that had both a shipping empire with a conscience, exactly, fair wages, environmental standards, profit with principle. Everything your mother said was impossible. Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then my grandfather would have loved you. Would he? He tested me to see if I'd choose correctly. But I think he'd be even more impressed that you're choosing to build instead of destroy. That after everything my family did to you, you're still willing to work with us. Not with your mother, not with Vivian, but with you, Isadora squeezed his hand. With you, I'll build anything. They drove toward Boston, toward a future that held boardrooms and battles and the hard work of transforming two broken companies into something better. But they drove together. And that made all the difference. Sterling Blackwood Maritime announced record profits and a revolutionary ethics initiative. Workers received profit sharing. Environmental standards exceeded federal requirements. The old guard complained, the new guard thrived. Vivian served 18 months in minimum security for embezzlement. Wrote letters to her mother that Constance answered with increasing warmth. Redemption would take years, but it was possible. Preston Aldridge lost his extradition fight, served 36 months, emerged humbled, started over in obscurity, and on a Saturday morning in June, Isadora Sterling Blackwood stood at the window of the 42nd floor office overlooking Boston Harbor. Same building where Sterling Maritime had voted to reject the merger. Same view, different woman. She wore a simple dress, no armor needed. Her engagement ring caught sunlight. Beside her, Damien reviewed quarterly reports. The board wants to expand into sustainable shipping. He looked up. Hydrogen fuel cells. Wind-assisted propulsion. They're calling it the Sterling Initiative. After my father, after you, you're the one who pushed for it. Isadora smiled, turned from the window. What do you think? I think your father would be proud. I think my grandfather would be impressed. I think we're building exactly what they hoped we would. A knock at the door. Marcus Pemberton entered, carried a bottle of champagne and an expression of quiet satisfaction. The SEC closed its investigation. Vivian's restitution is complete. The company is officially in the clear. He popped the cork. Congratulations, you survived. They toasted with paper cups because the office still didn't have proper glassware. More than survived. Damien raised his cup. We built something better than what existed before. To building better. Isadora clinked her cup against his. Outside the window, ships moved across the harbor. Trade continued. Legacy evolved. And in an office that had once been enemy territory, two people who'd fought through every test that wealth and family and society could throw at them stood together. Equals, partners, survivors. The war was over. They'd won not by destroying their enemies, but by refusing to become like them. By choosing truth over comfort. Love over legacy, future over past. Ready for the next battle? Damien asked. What's the next battle? Convincing your Mrs. Whitmore to join our board. She's been dodging my calls. Isadora laughed. That's not a battle. That's a siege. Eleanor doesn't join anything unless she controls it. Then we'll make her chair, whatever it takes. You're learning. I had a good teacher. They left the office hand in hand, descended 42 floors to street level, emerged into June sunshine. The world continued. Society gossiped about newer scandals. The Blackwood name slowly rebuilt from ruins. The Sterling legacy expanded in directions Silas had never imagined. And two people who'd been tested by love and money and family and fate walked into their future together. Not because a dead man designed it, not because society approved, not because the inheritance demanded it, but because they chose it. Every day, every moment, every time it would have been easier to walk away. That choice, that simple, daily, deliberate choice, had changed everything. The past was past, the future was now, and they were ready.